All right, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us on Earlymark Check the Spec series. When we're discussing high-risk areas of a project, corrosion would certainly fall into that category. And to discuss protective coatings, sustainability, and industry standards, we welcome Keith Owen from International Coatings. Welcome, Keith.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to having a chat with you.
Terrific. And a big part of the conversation we're having today is on the back of a CPD you recently did to Earlymark, which was obviously very well received and really informative. So this was a nice opportunity to expand on what you're doing out in the market with designers and architects regarding your CPD training, so we can dig a little bit deeper on some of those points that you cover off within the detailed presentation that you do.
Yeah, happy to, mate. Sounds good.
Excellent. So a bit of a topic of this conversation is, the cost of corrosion and sustainability of protective coating systems. A question I've got, and a few questions, if you don't mind, Keith, that we'll cover off on. The first one I have for you today is, in that recent CPD presentation you did, you talked about the cost of corrosion and how you can enhance sustainability by durability. Love to dig a little bit deeper on that, if you can elaborate.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so the cost of corrosion is a big deal. And the estimate that we refer to was from a 2016 study, which put the cost of corrosion at about $2.5 trillion globally. Wow. And that's the complete cost, including rectification, replacement of items, and other factors. So the point we make is, it's a serious task to make sure that we get our specifications right and correct.
Yep.
There's things we can look at to ensure that we're mitigating corrosion as much as possible. And when I say sustainability through durability, that's exactly what I mean. So what can we do to extend the life of our assets, to extend our maintenance cycles, or to essentially make the performance of that protective coating system as efficient and sustainable as possible. So looking at durability and long-term performance really goes a long way to do that.
Wow, and that's an enormous number, 2.5 trillion, and I suppose that's those are the opportunities we have, with us working closely with you, is that we can, look to improve the integrity of builds, and with that, ideally, bring that number down.
Yeah, it's a huge number, but like I said during the presentation that we had as well, that was a 2016 number. It's very difficult to find a new number for that, but nothing goes down in value over the space of about 10 years. So I'm sure it's much more than that now in reality.
Yeah, it's scary, isn't it? Thanks, Keith. And then the second question I had is, with that, how do we drive sustainability by adhering to some of those best practices you mentioned?
Well, if we talk about sustainability in this case, we're talking about economic sustainability, environmental sustainability, and all of those things are important outside of what we tend to think is sustainability, which is just about emissions. That's obviously very important as well. But there's a lot more to do. There's a lot more that can be done in the name of sustainability around that efficiency and performance of a protective coating system.
Love it. And building on that, Keith, can you tell me more about how looking at global protective coating standards can drive sustainability?
Yeah, I can. And this is a point that I talk about quite a lot. We've got some really good Australian standards when it comes to protective coatings and their performance, and that standard also covers their specification. But those standards are excellent, and they're based on track record and good performance over years. So there's nothing wrong with what we have locally. But what my challenge is to the specification community is to just look a bit further afield. A lot of the global standards, and they're called global standards, so that would encompass Australia, obviously, Australia and New Zealand, and even in parts of this region, we look to British standards and other global standards for our policies and specification help around this. So I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at a global standard if we can do better. And I think in a sustainability sense, we can absolutely do better. We can achieve like-for-like durability and performance through a paint system, but we can do that cleverly. We can minimize the amount of material that's used, hence drastically reducing cost, which is very important in construction these days. But also, in turn, that reduces VOC emissions and also subsequent carbon footprint and CO2 equivalent. So we can do a lot by just looking a little bit more closely at how we specify things. And one of the questions that was asked in the presentation was, and it's usually asked in the presentation that I give on this topic, is, we're bound to use Australian standards in our building code. How do we go about looking at this? How do we go about doing this? And really, what we've got to do is adhere to what we need to adhere to, but we need to provide those alternatives. And people like myself are here to actually assist specifiers to do that. And we've got many examples with ironically, very large government-funded projects where we've actually gone outside of the Australian standard and provided systems out of global standards. So it's not something that hasn't been done, and it's not something that won't be accepted by government projects and public authorities. So I think we have a duty to look at it. And one thing that I always say with this as well, it's not just about emissions. It's not just about minimizing waste. It's not just about reducing cost. All of those things are important. At the end of the day, it's good business for everybody in the contract chain.
Definitely. And I want to touch on now a little bit about innovations and if in fact there are innovations within the protective coating industry. Keith, can you share a little bit about that? What innovations, if there are any at all, that are happening within your space?
Look, it's a good time for innovation, and we are in a difficult market, particularly in Australia, when it comes to protective coatings. And I think the protective coatings market overall is a shrinking one. So we need to look at innovation. We need to stop projects going offshore. We need to be more thoughtful and more efficient when it comes to sustainability. There's definitely a slew of product innovations that are coming through the pipeline, I guess you could say, globally speaking. One of those centers around minimizing the use of zinc metal in zinc-rich primers, and there's a manufacturer that's putting formulations together with much less zinc in the formulation, still providing similar performance. One thing that we're doing is actually looking at what we call universal primers. So there's actually no zinc metal in those primers, and what we've done through durability testing is being able to demonstrate equal or greater performance to a 3-coat system, which includes a zinc-rich primer with one of these universal primers. So, from a sustainability perspective, your carbon footprint number drastically reduces by looking at that sort of technology. Another really good innovation that we've done recently is essentially look at how we apply our epoxy intumescent products. Intumescent coatings are not an inexpensive proposition on a project. They do add a lot of cost. So, again, with cost being a function of sustainability, just like in emissions or anything else, we need to be innovative in how we specify it. So what we've actually been able to do is look at removing the priming process, or look at removing, even in some cases, the abrasive blast cleaning process. So we're actually applying these coatings direct to black steel. Now, that's not going to be something we can do in every case, but if we're talking about a C2 or C3 exposure, we can absolutely do that and stand behind the durability data that we have. So, we're removing processes in the construction process, and again, the cost benefits of that are enormous for a project, but also from an emissions perspective, if we're removing abrasive blasting, the figure that we have in one of the presentations is a 10,000 square meter application. We're actually removing 30,000 tons of CO2 equivalent emissions just from doing that. So the numbers all of a sudden are starting to get significant, and it's not by having a new product, it's not by going into a space that no one's been, but it's just by cleverly looking at how we employ what we've already got. So that's another way we can innovate.
Yeah, it's great. And you've mentioned, Keith, the carbon footprint. Why is this an important metric when considering a product for a sustainability point of view?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of greenwashing. There's a lot of this is greener than this is greener than that. But you have to be able to measure that, and you have to be able to demonstrate that to an authority or to a certifier or a green scheme or whoever you're looking to get your system over the line with. It could be a specifier, it could be an engineer.
Yeah.
What we can demonstrate by talking about carbon footprint is an apples to apples comparison based on life cycle analysis and based on data found within environmental product declarations, which we have for most of our products, and any good manufacturer should have those for their products. If not all the products, most of the products. So the specifier should be able to make an educated decision based on embodied carbon through a life cycle analysis. Even if they want to only look at a portion of that, then look at the portion of that between the products for a good comparison. We do unfortunately see some products advertised with a very low carbon footprint, and then you realize that they've only taken into account 3 of the sort of 8 life cycle stages there. So it's really important to make sure we're looking at apples to apples. But carbon footprint gives us the same data regardless of whether we're selecting protective coatings, door furniture, carpets, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It's a good number that actually is quite meaningful. And I think sooner or later, if not already, we're going to be required to be reporting on this from a legal perspective. So that's something we need to consider also.
Yeah, and tell me a little bit about the types of hazardous materials within protective coatings and how to best avoid their use.
Yeah, thanks. Hazardous materials are unfortunately still a big part of the protective coatings industry. We are chemical manufacturers at heart, essentially, and every paint or protective coating has obviously certain chemicals in it to make it to make the formulation. There is still a few environmentally hazardous and hazardous to health compounds and chemicals that are used in these formulations. Isocyanate is a big one, which is found within most polyurethane products. There is a couple of isocyanate-free polyurethanes in the market, but typically speaking, for most of the larger manufacturers, all of your polyurethanes are still including isocyanate. The other one is PFAS compounds or chemicals, and they can be called forever chemicals depending on what you're looking at. And even if your product has a small amount of PFAS, I still don't think there's a good level of some of these things. And speaking about regulations, there's some countries in the world where the safe level of PFAS is 0, for example, whereas in our country there is a level that is deemed safe. So there is some nasties and some hazardous chemicals still within these formulations. They are being removed and replaced with non-hazardous materials, but that takes time. Sometimes that's a cost factor. Sometimes there may not just be a good alternative there. But it's important to have an understanding of this from a specification point of view. There is coatings available that don't have these chemicals in them. Catalyzed acrylics, a lot of waterborne technology, polysiloxane. These are coatings that don't have these harmful compounds in them. So we can do better, and we can look for alternatives.
Love that. And Keith, anything that we've touched on through this conversation, I'm out of questions. You've gone through that beautifully. Thank you for your for elaborating on those, and any points that you've raised within this chat. We'll have your information attached to what we send out. Designers, reach out to you direct to have any questions. We do have all your products. We have international protective coatings within Early Select, so they're ready to be specified, and Keith, we appreciate your time, mate. It's been very informative.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. It's been a pleasure. Always good to talk about these things, and as you said, always here to field any inquiries or answer any questions.
Love that. Thank you, Keith. Appreciate your time, mate. Thank you.
Thank you.